Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Human mechanics saved a badly broken alien wolf ship, but years later it tracked him down to thank him. The wind off the lone coast never whispered. It howled, gnawed, tore across the sea, and chewed into the cliffs like it had a score to settle. The ocean here didn't roll in lazy swells. It crashed like it hated the land. Most folks who retired here were either half crazy or trying to disappear. Tom Hawkins was both. He didn't come for peace. He came for the silence no one else wanted, a weather-worn shack, a generator that coughed more than it purred, and a graveyard of rusted engine parts spread out on the sand like the skeleton of some mechanical beast. These were his companions. He hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks. When he saw it that morning, the tide rolled out too far and the gulls circled something that glinted beneath the silt. At first he thought it was the frame of a cargo barge, maybe a shuttle from the old off-world freight line that used to run decades back. But as he approached, he realized it wasn't just the sea pulling tricks on him. It was no ship he'd ever seen, half buried in the sand and seaweed. The thing looked like a machine built to mimic a predator. A wolf, massive, at least 50 m from tail to nose, its legs folded beneath it like it had collapsed mid-leap. Metal ribs jutted from its side, corroded and gashed, and a gaping hole where the left eye might have been, used like rust, like blood. He should have walked away. Tom Hawkins didn't walk away from broken things. His fingers twitched, that old itch, the one that led him to scrapyards and junk colonies, the one that never left even after his back gave out and his bones turned brittle, started clawing at his insides again. The damn thing was breathing, not literally, no, but up close through the crackled plates and buried armor he heard it. A slow, irregular pulse, a deep, resonant hum coming from somewhere inside the beast, like a heart that had forgotten how to die. He climbed inside the wreck that day, and that's when everything started changing. The interior stank of oxidized coolant, and old Storm's salt water had seeped into the seams, turned the wires into brittle threads, choked out what little light still flickered from consoles welded into strange, ribbed columns. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It was a hybrid of machine and mind, a construct of angles and architecture that seemed to rearrange itself as Tom moved. The main chamber was deep beneath the surface, tucked into the creature's chest cavity like a heart hidden beneath bone screens, hung like torn curtains dangling from blackened pylons. Some were shattered, some still blinked with alien script. A few pulsed very slowly as if they were trying to wake but didn't quite remember how. Tom spent the first night just watching. The second night he brought tools, and on the third night, when the ocean raged outside and the rain came down in hard diagonal slashes, he peeled open the engine pod and stared into a configuration that didn't obey any of the laws he'd learned. It was all wrong, and yet it made sense. Organic mechanical junctions, pools conduits that looked like nerve bundles, cooling systems that bled not air but a thick vapor that smelled like burned ozone. None of it should have been running, and yet when Tom connected his probe array to the node cluster near the engine cortex, the machine sighed. Actually sighed, a long, low exhale through unseen vents that rattled the hall like a wolf stirring in its sleep. Tom leaned back and whispered, "What the hell are you?" The answer didn't come in words, it came in light. A single beam flickered to life from the center console and scanned his face, trailing down his chest, pausing at his hands. The readout flashed red, then blue, then green. Then it stopped, and the ship did something he hadn't expected. It opened. Metal plates groaned and shifted, wires retracted, doors he hadn't seen unlocked with hisses of compressed air, pathways illuminated in soft light leading deeper towards something that had waited too long in the dark. Tom wiped the rain from his face, gripped his tools, and stepped into the heart of the machine. Somewhere ahead, the pulse grew stronger. The wolf wasn't dead. It was waiting. The tunnel led deeper into the creature's chest where steel bones arched like the ribs of a long-dead giant. Tom moved slowly, careful not to disturb what still clung to life inside. Every footstep echoed softly, absorbed by the strange, almost velvet-textured walls that shifted color with the rhythm of the pulse. The air was warmer here, humid, charged with static as if the machine were alive, just dormant. When he reached the core, he wasn't sure what to expect, certainly not what he found. It was a chamber unlike any he'd ever seen. Suspended in its center, encased in a transparent crystalline shell, was something that resembled both an engine and a heart. It pulsed with steady rhythm, an amber light glowing in timed flashes, tubes, veins, conduits, some metallic, others almost organic, snaked into it from every direction. Above it, like a crown, a control ring hovered, spinning slowly, engraved with unfamiliar glyphs that lit up one by one as he approached. A soft chime echoed through the space, then a voice, faint, warped, broken by time. Designation, Tsar Varen. Status, incomplete, systems fragmentary. The words weren't spoken through speakers, they bloomed directly into Tom's mind, translated without sound. The voice was deep, tired, almost apologetic. He stepped forward, placing a hand on a panel near the core. It was warm. Zarin, he murmured. Is that your name? A pause. Zarvan, primary designation, wolf ship, class Sentinel, fleet lost, purpose unclear, memory damaged. Tom frowned. A ship more. The voice replied, stronger now. Once I was guardian. I protected my kind, carried them, housed them, fought beside them. Tom felt a heaviness rise in his chest. Something sacred had been buried here. What happened? Silence, fire, alone, a flicker of images danced across the walls. Glimpses of starfields torn by lightning, massive creatures of steel and plasma locked in combat, a fleet breaking apart, explosions without sound. Then the image of Earth, distant, blue, beautiful, and a descent, a fall. He realized what he was looking at, a crash. Jar Varon had not landed here, he had crashed. He'd been falling for years, his systems failing, dragging himself toward a place that would have seemed like a cradle from the edge of space. Earth, a haven, a last breath. Tom sat on a nearby ledge, the cold biting through his coveralls, and stared up at the core, whispering, "You've been alone a long time, haven't you?" The lights dimmed as if in answer. He looked down at his own hands, scarred from decades of welding, grease under every nail, and said, "I'm not a soldier or a pilot. Hell, I haven't flown anything bigger than a water hauler since before the rings fell, but I know how to fix broken things." The voice returned, softer now. "Then fix me." He didn't hesitate. He stood and got to work restoring Jar Varon. It wasn't like fixing an old star cruiser or a stubborn atmospheric turbine. It wasn't just reconnecting wires or swapping out damaged servos. It was more like mending a wounded creature. The ship responded to his touch, adjusted to his intentions. Panels retracted before he reached them. Conduits guided his hands like the ship knew what it needed. Every hour inside it, Tom felt less like a mechanic and more like a surgeon repairing something sacred. He started with the core stabilization field. Its matrix had been compromised, its synchronization array fried from a pulse overload that probably hit mid-atmosphere. It took 3 days to rewire 2 backup batteries from his own generator shack and a modified pulse harmonizer he'd salvaged from an old moon loader. When it lit properly, steady, smooth, he swore he felt the ground beneath the ship shift slightly, like the whole structure exhaled. He slept inside the ship every night after that. He built a hammock in what must have once been a storage alcove, tucked just behind a decommissioned thruster array. Jar dimmed the lights for him when he slept, and if storms rolled in, the ship sealed him in with a quiet hum of protective shielding. There were times, too, when the ship showed him flashes of memory, not as data but as dreams. He'd see through the eyes of the wolf ship flying between stars with streaks of silver beside him. Other sentinels he'd feel the loyalty, the pride of belonging. And then always the fall, the slow tear of gravity and flame as Jar was torn from his fleet, pulled toward Earth, alone. Tom came to understand something deeper. Jar wasn't just a machine, he was the vessel of a people, a guardian created to house their young, to protect them from the void. Somewhere deep in his frame were the echoes of voices that had long since vanished. But Tom also saw something else in those dreams. A face, a young one, muzzled, bright-eyed, a cub, a passenger, the last perhaps. Tom never asked Tsar, never said, but every time Tom restored a function, rebooted a nav system, rerouted power through the fractured hull, he felt the echo grow stronger, not just of the ship but of whoever had once called it home. And slowly, through bolts and circuits, fire and patience, man and machine built something together. A bond not of owner and tool, but of survivor and savior, father and son, though neither said the words. Not yet. By the 3rd month, Jar Varon's outer plating gleamed under the sun, not with polish but with purpose. The once shattered hull had been reforged with a blend of scavenged alloys and materials, the ship itself having replicated, learning from Tom's tools, mimicking his handiwork. Together they rebuilt sections that should never have been whole again. Tom didn't sleep much anymore. He didn't need to. The ship sustained him, fed him from a nutrient synthesizer it had resurrected. He rarely left the shoreline. Now there was no reason to. In the evenings, when the wind calmed and the sea laid flat like glass, Jar spoke not just in instructions or warnings, but in questions, curious things like, "What is the purpose of fishing?" Or "Why do sunsets stir emotion?" Tom would answer them, sometimes laughing, sometimes pausing with a soft weight in his chest, though he didn't always understand. One night, as lightning flickered deep on the horizon, Jar asked, "You have not given me a name beyond designation." "Why?" Tom, half asleep beneath the wing joint he was repairing, scratched his beard. "Didn't figure it was my place. You gave me life again, isn't that what fathers do?" Tom sat still a moment, his heart thudding like someone had reached inside him and knocked. "Well," he said slowly, "I didn't know you were looking for one." Jar pulsed gently in the dark. "I was." Tom leaned back and looked at the stars above for a long time, neither of them speaking. Then he said, "Your name's Corin. It means wolf in one of the old Earth tongues. Seems right. You're not just a ship, you're someone now." "Corin," the ship echoed, and for the first time the pulse in the walls shifted, warmer, more alive. That night Tom slept deeper than he had in years, and when he dreamed, it wasn't of stars or crashes or solitude. It was of running wild and free across hills that stretched forever beside something strong, fast, and full of joy. The dreams turned real when the first signal came. It was faint, a ripple across the long-dead comms array. Tom was cleaning salt deposits from the outer wing struts when Corin chimed just a single, sharp tone that vibrated in the air like a bell rung underwater. "What is it?" Tom asked, already reaching for his tool belt. The pulse signature, wolf language, deep space encoded, old, very old. Corin projected the data into the air. It appeared as rotating script, strange glyphs dancing in golden spirals. Tom couldn't read it, but he didn't need to. He felt it, a call from somewhere far beyond Earth. The ship hesitated, then translated. "To the lost sentinels, to the fallen children, we are calling you home. Come if you remain, come and remember." Tom's heart twisted. "Someone survived, maybe," Corin said, and though the voice was steady, something shook inside the core. "Or maybe it is a ghost, a loop, a final breath played over and over. You want to go, don't you?" "Silence, then I do not know." Tom stood beside the ship, his hands resting on the warm curve of its neck-like ridge. "You've earned the choice, you're whole again, you can fly. I could leave you, but then I would leave you." Tom smiled faintly. "I wouldn't stop you, Corin, but I'd sure as hell miss you." The ship's lights dimmed, then pulsed. "If I go, I will return." Tom nodded. "You know something," he added. "You remind me of my son." There was a long pause. "I did not know you had one. I didn't, not until now." There was no reply, not in words, but the ship warmed again, the lights grew soft, and somewhere inside, a heart built of stars and memory thudded slow, steady, and grateful. That night the wind carried no salt, only silence. The good kind, the kind that sits between people who love each other too much to say more. The next few weeks moved with strange slowness, like the tide pulling back before a storm. Corin was flying now, not into the sky yet, but just above the sand and water, hovering close to the surf's edge. His wings, once battered and bent like shattered sculpture, now spread wide with strength and poise. He would lift for minutes at a time, arc down the coast, then circle back to the landing cradle Tom had built with his own two hands. To Tom, it looked like watching a child learn how to run. The ship had become a wolf again, not a machine, not a wreck, but a creature that belonged to the stars and still chose to stay by the sea. Until the second signal came, this one louder, sharper, not a cry of hope like the first, but a warning, a flare bursting across frequencies that hadn't been touched in generations. Survivors returning, systems failing, enemy remnants awakening. Sentinel-class vessels required immediate recall. Corin translated it in silence. Tom sat beside the fire pit outside the shack, watching flames dance beneath the darkening sky. The stars were especially bright that night. Corin's hull glowed faintly nearby, almost breathing. "They need you," Tom said. "Not as a question, I was built to protect them," Corin answered. "But I wasn't ready, I failed, I fell." "You didn't fail, you endured." Corin didn't respond right away. "Then if I go, it may be a long time before I can return." Tom poked at the fire. "How long's long for something like you?" Corin's voice softened. "Generations, maybe, if the stars are kind. I do not age like you do." Tom stared into the flame. His bones ached more these days. His hands moved slower. "Then it's time," he said quietly. "I don't want to leave you. I didn't fix you to keep you. Tom, I fixed you so you'd fly again, so go." Corin shifted on the sand, metal limbs folding and adjusting as he turned toward the ocean. I want to do one last thing before I leave. What's that? I want to fly with you. Tom blinked. What me? You know I hate flying. Corin chuckled, a soft hum across his hull. I know, but I also know you've never seen your world from above. You're impossible, Tom muttered, standing up and brushing sand from his pants. All right, just once for you. The ship's cockpit opened with a slow exhale of warm air. Tom climbed in and sat in the padded seat that had once held an alien pilot, now reshaped to fit the man who brought the wolf back to life. Corin rose into the sky like a memory waking up. Together they soared across the ocean, over cliffs and forests, across mountains that glittered with moonlight, Earth spread out beneath them. Vast, old, and alive, and Tom, who had spent a lifetime fixing the broken, felt something inside him mend, too. For a moment they weren't father and ship. They weren't man and machine. They were just a wolf in his sky. The next morning, Tom stood barefoot at the shoreline, the waves cold around his ankles. The wind had died to a whisper, and the ocean stretched out like polished glass. Corin stood beside him, wings drawn tight, waiting. When you find them, tell them what you were, tell them what you became, and come back when you're ready. I will, Corin said, voice low. Reverend, you were the last piece I needed to become whole. Tom smiled. I'll keep the fires warm. Corin took a step toward the water, then another, until the ocean embraced his legs. Then his back lifted, wings unfurling, turbines humming low and deep. The sea rose around him, spiraling as his body broke gravity's grip and climbed higher and higher into the waiting sky. Tom shielded his eyes as the wolf ship shot into the heavens like a comet reborn, and then silence. He stood there long after the ship vanished from sight, listening to the waves, the wind, the heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet. The years that followed came and went like leaves in the tide. Tom grew slower, older. He stopped fixing things and started remembering instead. Sometimes, when storms rolled over the sea, he would look up and wonder if Corin had found his people, if the stars still knew his name. Then one clear evening, decades later, Tom's son stood on the same shore, not by blood, not by flesh, but by bond. A silhouette broke the sky. It was not Corin as Tom had known him. It was smaller, younger, sleeker, the child of a wolf born from steel and fire. The cockpit opened, and the voice was familiar, not quite Corin, but something carried from him, something brighter. I've come to thank the man who saved my father, it said. The wind caught the words, and the sea, still and vast, whispered them back in kind. The craft that descended was not just sleek. It shimmered with a kind of living grace that only deep space legacy tech could possess. Its design was clearly inherited from Corin, in lean, aerodynamic form, forged of interwoven alloys that gleamed like starlight. Yet this ship bore the elegance of youth. It moved not like a vehicle, but like a creature that had been raised among stars and storms. Tom's knees nearly gave out. He hadn't expected to see another one, not so soon, not in his lifetime. His back was hunched now, his hair white as bone, but his eyes were sharp enough to see what stood before him as the vessel touched down. A hatch opened, and from it stepped a figure tall but not towering, fur shimmered with faint streaks of silver and gold, a blend of soft and sleek, and violet eyes scanned the shore with a precision Tom recognized in an instant. The young wolf stepped forward and dropped to one knee, head bowed. You are the one my father never stopped speaking of, the voice said, not through a mouth, but in the familiar projection that echoed through thought. You gave him purpose when he had nothing but silence. Tom's throat tightened, his hands trembled. I just fixed what was broken, he said, voice raspier than he remembered. Didn't know I was fixing a heart. The young wolf stood slowly, his movements practiced, patient. He called you Tom of Earth, but to us your name is Keeper, Restorer, Seedbearer. Tom smiled through the ache in his chest. He always was dramatic. The wolf chuckled gently, a sound somewhere between a growl and a hum, not in this world. From his back he unfurled twin wings, not metal but a hybrid of energy and woven scale, pulsing with heat. I have come to honor his bond and yours. My name is Thion Flameborn of Corin, sentinel of the 5th star lineage. Tom took a shaky step forward. Thion met him halfway. They embraced, not as strangers, not as man and alien, but as kin, bound by history and hope. For a moment the sea stopped breathing, the wind dared not stir, only the pulse of two heartlines meeting again after time's long sundering remained. They spent that day walking the coast together, speaking of the worlds Corin had reclaimed, the people he'd found, the relics he'd reawakened. He told Tom of battles fought in silence, of lost sentinels revived from ruins, of stars that blinked out and came back stronger. Corin had become more than what he was, no longer just a guardian, but a builder of peace among the ashes of war. Tom, he listened sometimes, with tears in his eyes, sometimes with laughter that cracked his weathered face wide open. You came all this way, he said finally, sitting beside the fire pit that had long gone unused. Not just to say thank you, did you? Theo nodded. No, I came to return something that belongs to you. From a compartment on his chest plate, he drew a small crystal pulsing warm. When placed in Tom's hand, it glowed brighter. The light washed over him, and for a moment he wasn't old, he wasn't aching. He was young again, arms strong, heart full. This, Thion, he said, is the echo of Corin's memory, his final spark before he returned to the stars. Tom stared at it, tears welling. He's gone. Not gone, Thion replied, ascended, his body scattered in the breath of a new star, his code sent forward to seed other guardians, but his soul, he left it here with you. Tom placed the crystal over his heart. It melted into his chest like warmth in winter. Suddenly the air around him felt full, not crowded but complete. You were his father, then said softly, and now if you will have me, I would be your son. Tom didn't speak. He stood, walked to Thion and Nada, and pulled him into an embrace that bridged galaxies. The next day, the townsfolk awoke to find two figures standing at the edge of the ocean, one old, one ageless, and then a fire tore across the sky as Thion's wings unfurled. With Tom at his side, they soared into the clouds, higher than gales, higher than storms. The mechanic who had once fixed a broken ship had not just saved a sentinel. He had raised a legacy, and now that legacy had come home to carry him forward. The wolf ship had flown once more, and with it so did the man who dared to care for something no one else understood. A fire lit the horizon that night, not just in the sky, but in every soul that still believes kindness can echo through stars.